In the NHL, trades will be a daily topic of interest all the way up to the trade deadline, February 25th. With that in mind, we say hello to Bob McKenzie. Nashville was pretty active today, Bob, first acquiring Brian Boyle from the Devils and then Cody McLeod from the Rangers. What do you read into these moves?
Well, first off, from a league perspective, people sat up and took notice when the Devils got Brian Boyle. When the Predators got Brian Boyle from the New Jersey Devils for a second-round pick. And the reason they sat up and took notice is because of the price. Now, Brian Boyle is a depth player, depth forward, but a high-quality depth forward nonetheless, and a second-round pick. So there's a lot of people, a lot of teams that have rental players with players who are playing higher up in the lineup than Brian Boyle. So they're getting excited because, okay, well, if Nashville's willing to give up a second-round pick for Brian Boyle, we've got a rental market set. We're going to get first-round picks for all of their guys. But the reason Nashville made this trade is because they obviously do need depth, and they need some grit and some size. Austin Watson's not in their lineup indefinitely. He's suspended without pay right now as part of the NHLPA substance abuse and behavioral modification program for some alcohol-related issues. Zach Rinaldo is out for the next couple of months with an injury. So getting a guy like Brian Boyle, who can play on the power play, kill penalties, take faceoffs, he's a valuable guy. But also bringing back Cody McLeod from the New York Rangers, a real prototypical tough guy that can fight and hit and create some energy on your fourth line. That sort of fits in with what the Predators need at this time because of injuries and Austin Watson's absence. But I think that you heard David Poile, the general manager in Nashville, say today, you know what, if we have to go into the playoffs with our lineup exactly the way it is now, perfectly happy. That said, if we can improve our team, we will. Those are the two things every general manager says at this time of the year. And I think the Nashville Predators, because they are a cup contending team who are kind of on the clock, their biological clock's not ticking too loud, but the window's wide open for them right now. I could see David Poile trying to do some big game hunting, and whether that's Artemi Panarin in Columbus or if Matt Duchene or Mark Stone become available in Ottawa, at least give it a go to see what the cost would be. My suspicion is Nashville would have to be willing to part with a first-round pick and possibly a real high-end prospect like Eli Tolvanen or others if they're going to get into the big game hunting. But I think that's something that Poile's going to at least look at because, he'd like to win that Stanley Cup sooner rather than later.
We're going to spend time with those two players you mentioned from Columbus in just a moment. But first, Ottawa plays Toronto tonight. I think because they have the fewest points in the NHL, frankly, there's a lot more interest in what they might do with Mark Stone and Matt Duchene. What are you hearing there?
Well, on Monday, Pat Brisson, the agent for Matt Duchene, met with Pierre Dorion, the general manager of the Ottawa Senators. Fairly lengthy meeting, and in fact, Duchene was part of that meeting. And I don't believe they necessarily drilled down on numbers or terms. There's been some offers on the table already. And Matt Duchene, in fact, said yesterday, as a matter of fact, that right now it's not about money. And what it was, what they discussed in that meeting, we're led to believe, is a player-by-player, prospect-by-prospect, position-by-position look at the Senators, where they are now, where they want to get to, how quickly they may or may not get there. And I think really the crux for both Matt Duchene and Mark Stone is simply that. Yeah, money's important, and so's term, and they'll get to that. But what's more important, if you're going to sign on for 7 or 8 years with a team that's just starting a massive rebuild, how long is it going to take before they're going to be any good? And is it going to happen in the lifetime of that 7 or 8 year deal that they could be signing? So I think that's the sales job that needs to be made. And before they drill down on term and dollars, the players need to be comfortable with the direction of the ownership, have some faith and belief that ownership, management, coaching staff, scouts, and everybody in the room are all on the same page, and that they're going to push this thing forward sooner rather than later. Now, I should also point out that I get the feeling right now more of the focus and energy in Ottawa is on trying to get Duchene's deal done than Stone's. That's not to say it couldn't change, but right now Duchene seems to be the focal point of them trying to get something done.
Now back to that big game hunting that you mentioned with Columbus. What do you think they're going to do with Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky?
Well, it's really the same dynamic as we've been talking about since it became apparent that these guys aren't going to sign in Columbus, and that is, if Jarmo Kekalainen, the general manager in Columbus, gets an offer that blows his socks off, then he'll seriously consider moving these guys. But to do so would mean to torpedo his playoff chances because, quite frankly, Panarin's their best player up front, and if Bobrovsky's on his game and playing like a Vezina caliber goalie, he can impact the game like nobody other than maybe Panarin on the ice. But Larry Brooks from the New York Post reported this week The Florida Panthers did contact Columbus, both players, but primarily Bobrovsky, who might be an attractive option for the Florida Panthers as they go forward. But the sense out of Florida seems to be that they don't want to waste a lot of assets right now leading up to the deadline on something that they could do in free agency this summer, because both Panarin and Bobrovsky will be available then.
And here's something I never thought I'd be saying to you right now, Bob. Philadelphia has won 8 consecutive games. They're only 7 points out of a playoff spot behind Columbus. Does all this winning change their willingness to deal Wayne Simmons?
Not really, and you're absolutely right about the Flyers. I mean, what a story. Carter Hart and Nat has made a huge difference. Scott Gordon and Rick Wilson have done a really nice job to come in and get this team playing better on special teams, defending the front of the net better. A lot of different things are happening there that are meshing for the Philadelphia Flyers. As for Wayne Simmons, he's on an expiring contract. At this moment in time, it doesn't look as though the Flyers will re-sign him. The door's not entirely closed on that, but it's trending more in that direction. And I think even if the Flyers are in the thick of a playoff race, Simmons is the one piece that they may look at saying, you know what, we need to get something for him anyway. And so I think it's more likely than not that Simmons will be traded by the deadline, but not 100% that he will be. And as for the heavy lifting that Chuck Fletcher has to do, trying to get a top 9 forward with term, trying to get a top 4 defenseman with term, trying to find a veteran goaltender that can mentor and insulate Carter Hart a little bit, I think most of that heavy lifting will take place in the offseason as opposed to now. But they're enjoying things in Philadelphia because, boy, it was a tough start to the year.